What's up, guys? I'm DK, and you're watching Pro Wrestling What If, the series where I look at the different what if scenarios as terms of the world that we call professional wrestling. Batista would make his return to WWE in 2014, and he would compete in that year's Royal Rumble match at entry number 28 and actually win the Royal Rumble match. Batista had made his return as a full-fledged babyface, however, with the fans being behind the B-plus player Daniel Bryan, that actually changed things for Batista, which after his match against Alberto Del Rio at the Elimination Chamber, Batista would turn heel on the road to WrestleMania 30. And the original plans of Randy Orton versus Batista were then changed to Daniel Bryan being inserted into the match, making it a triple threat match. Batista would then compete at the following two pay-per-views of Extreme Rules and Payback, teaming up with Randy Orton and Triple H to form Evolution again and face off against Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Seth Rollins, collectively known as The Shield, in a six-man tag team match. Both of those matches in which The Shield had defeated Evolution. The following night after Payback, Batista would then announce that he would quit the WWE after not getting another crack at the World Heavyweight Championship. When in all reality, that storyline was made to write off Batista since he had legitimately quit the WWE due to creative differences between both Batista and the WWE itself. So of course in today's episode we're going to be talking about what if Batista didn't quit WWE in 2014. Now before I begin this episode with of course the 5 big points, I do want to mention that going into this episode we need to get into the mindset that of course Batista gets the right amount of money that he claims that he should have gotten during this run, plus some decent enough creative plans. And if you end up enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share this to all your friends, subscribe, and press the notification bell for when future episodes get released, and leave a comment down below about today's topic or suggesting a future topic for an episode of Pro Wrestling What If. So starting off with point number 1 is that he wouldn't have quit WWE. Kayfabe wise. Of course, regardless of whether Batista was quitting or not, he was set to leave so that he can promote the upcoming movie Guardians of the Galaxy. And in case you didn't know, Batista was actually supposed to leave a month prior to when he actually left, but Marvel actually allowed him to do a 1-month additional stay in WWE. And so the infamous Queen of England wave as he quit WWE was his way of leaving WWE. However, if he actually wasn't leaving the WWE, they probably would have figured out some sort of maybe injury angle for him to leave, that way that we know that at some point he is coming back. Now, I'm not sure if Batista would have taken it to the extreme to where he walks the red carpets for Guardians of the Galaxy wearing a neck brace, but you never know with the WWE realistically, especially around this time. Point number 2, the Shield wouldn't have broken up the night after Payback. As we all know, the same night that Batista had quit the WWE was the same night that we had seen Plan B executed, where we seen Seth Rollins hit Roman Reigns in the back with a steel chair and ultimately end the faction known as the Shield. And I think the reason that they did this was because of the sudden departure of Batista in WWE. So had Batista not quit the WWE in 2014, I think that the Shield would have had a bit longer of a run as a faction, especially because a lot of people weren't ready to see the Shield end just yet. However, the sudden breakup of the team is what makes this moment so shocking and unexpected. And maybe if they would have waited, we actually could have seen someone else end the Shield rather than Seth Rollins, as it was originally planned that Dean Ambrose, as early as January 2014, was supposed to end the Shield. So maybe it wouldn't have been Seth Rollins to end the Shield, it could have been Dean Ambrose or perhaps Roman Reigns, depending on how long they waited until the Shield actually broke up. Point number 3, Batista versus Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam still wouldn't have happened. A lot of people believe that at SummerSlam 2014, had Batista not left, that we would have gotten the long-awaited dream match between Batista and Brock Lesnar. Now, although Batista and Brock Lesnar did face off against each other in their developmental days during OVW, both men have actually never faced each other one-on-one in the main roster. And this would have been a dream come true for lots of fans. However, I don't think with the timing of everything that it would have happened. Of course, with Batista leaving in June of 2014 to promote Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, this would require Batista to be gone until at least the movie is set to release, which was of course August of that year, which then would mean that he would not have been able to compete in the vacant World Heavyweight Championship ladder match at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view and be crowned the champion like we seen with John Cena, and we certainly wouldn't have seen him be inserted into the Fatal 4-Way match a month later at the Battleground pay-per-view. So by the time Batista would have been able to come back, which is literally weeks before SummerSlam, there would have been no way for them to build up basically two part-timers facing each other for the WWE Championship, which is why this feud with John Cena and Brock Lesnar worked, because at least at this time, John Cena was a full-time performer and was able to carry the feud without Brock Lesnar being there all the time. But if they did it with two part-time superstars, there's just not really a way to where they would have been able to work it out. However, I do see a scenario where we do end up getting Batista versus Brock Lesnar in a way, but it wouldn't happen at SummerSlam. I think it would have happened at the Night of Champions pay-per-view the following month. And that is the idea of a Fatal 4-Way match with all of the Ohio Valley Four, being Brock Lesnar, John Cena, Batista, and Randy Orton, all fighting for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. In the real timeline, we had seen Brock Lesnar defend the title against John Cena at this event, and Randy Orton had faced Chris Jericho in a match, but of course Batista wasn't around in WWE at this time. And how I see this result happening would be that Brock Lesnar would retain the championship by pinning Batista to do so. Considering that of course John Cena and Randy Orton wouldn't have to take the pin, and tying into the real timeline, they could still have that match between Randy Orton and John Cena at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view the month after to determine the next #1 contender for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, which then would make Batista go on to his own different storyline, whether that's like an upper main event scene or maybe possibly going after the Intercontinental Championship. I'm not exactly sure. Point number 4, a Hollywood Batista gimmick? I think had Batista stuck around WWE in 2014, there could have been a chance that WWE would have utilized Batista's Hollywood status in making pretty much a whole new gimmick for him. Of course, back in 2003 is when we first seen the Hollywood Rock gimmick, and then later on kind of a hybrid of it with the Final Boss version, and we seen the Hollywood gimmick in 2014 for The Miz. And I know there was interviews released where Batista mentioned that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon laughed at the idea of WWE promoting Guardians of the Galaxy because they thought the movie was going to be a flop. I think that he could have done some sort of Hollywood gimmick, whether the movie actually was a box office success or not. Of course, we've seen Guardians of the Galaxy be a huge box office hit, which with this Hollywood Batista gimmick would make him more of a cockier character, considering that he's bragging of the fact that he made so much money off of a movie and now he's basically a movie star. But even if the fact that maybe Triple H and Stephanie McMahon were right in that Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be a flop, this would go towards more of the delusional side of the gimmick, basically what we kind of seen with The Miz, so to speak, where he would claim that he's this Hollywood A-list star, except the fact that all the movies that The Miz made were basically straight to DVD and never made it to the theaters. So Batista could even go around this by saying that he was in this Marvel movie, but it wasn't that big of a success, so it's very delusional in his head that he thinks he's this big movie star when he actually technically isn't at the time. But I think this potential Hollywood gimmick, which we kind of seen him do in 2019 with his feud with Triple H, possibly could have actually worked whether the movie was a flop or not, and actually reinvented Batista in some sort of way. And the fifth and final point is that I think Batista would leave WWE after WrestleMania 31. Of course, with seeing how big of a box office success that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 was, it was only a matter of time before Batista's availability in professional wrestling would be slim. And so with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 releasing in 2017, I would assume that most likely it takes maybe 2 years for these types of movies to be filmed, which would mean that he would have to start filming this movie around 2014 in order for that release date to actually happen. So I think Batista would have had somewhat of a full-time run all the way up until WrestleMania 31, and perhaps do we get the match of Batista versus Triple H at WrestleMania 31, and could this be Batista's official retirement match from WWE instead of in 2019 at WrestleMania 35? There could be a possibility with enough persuasion from from both Batista and of course Triple H that maybe this match actually would have happened as early as WrestleMania 31, which then begs the question, what would happen with Sting now if he's not facing Triple H? And maybe that would let Vince McMahon decide that we would have the long-awaited dream match of Sting versus The Undertaker. And then you're probably wondering also, what happens with Bray Wyatt then if he doesn't face The Undertaker? I think most likely he'd be inserted into that ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship. And so if Batista ends up getting what he wants, no pun intended to what he actually said in 2019, then we could probably have seen Batista versus Triple H in a match at WrestleMania 31 and could have deemed as Batista's retirement match. And for all we know, maybe he would have been inducted into the 2016 Hall of Fame and actually inducted in 2016 instead of trying to be inducted in 2020. And then because the pandemic happened, we still have yet to see Batista in the Hall of Fame.